For over 600 years, a single family dynasty ruled an empire that stretched across 3 continents. Incredible, right? But in its final century, this colossal power just crumbled, completely reshaping the world we live in. So today, we're going to dig into how one of the most influential empires in all of history literally vanished from the map.
Our story kicks off in the dead of night. Picture this. While his capital city is fast asleep, Sultan Abdul Hamid II is sneaking onto a train, heading west. He's on the run. He's abandoning his throne. His reign isn't ending with some epic battle, but with the quiet rumble of a departing train. And this single moment, well, it was a massive symptom of a decay that had been rotting the empire from the inside out for years.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How does an empire that lasted for 6 centuries, a true global superpower, just cease to exist? The answer isn't some single, simple event. Nope. It's a cascade of failures, a series of desperate reforms, and one final, absolutely catastrophic war. To really understand the end, we've got to go back, way back, long before the 20th century, because the first major cracks in the empire's foundation, they came from its most powerful institution, the military. Okay, so let's talk about the Janissaries. For centuries, these guys were the elite of the elite, the tip of the Ottoman spear. They were feared across Europe and the Middle East, and they were the engine that drove the empire's incredible expansion. But by the late 18th century, that engine was seriously sputtering. So what went wrong? Well, pretty much everything. The once elite Janissaries had become bloated with fighters who were, frankly, not well trained. They absolutely refused to modernize, clinging to old weapons, while their greed just fueled massive corruption. And this wasn't just an internal issue. Oh no. It led to one embarrassing military defeat after another and helped trigger major economic crises. The whole situation got so bad that Sultan Mahmud II had to do something drastic. In what has to be one of history's most grimly named events, the auspicious event, he had the Janissaries cornered and, well, massacred. It was brutal, no doubt about it, but it was decisive. He basically wiped the slate clean and replaced them with a modern European-style army. This was one of the first, and most painful, attempts to modernize a deeply traditional empire. Okay, so the military is getting an overhaul, but fixing the army opened up an even bigger, more complicated problem, a crisis of identity. What did it actually mean to be an Ottoman in the 19th century? This question led to this really ambitious period of reform called the Tanzimat, which literally means reordering. And that's exactly what it was. The goal was a complete top-to-bottom overhaul of the entire empire. We're talking modernizing the economy, streamlining the government, and creating a whole new legal system to try and hold all their diverse territories together. And you have to understand the scale of this challenge was just immense. The Ottoman Empire wasn't one nation. It was a patchwork quilt of dozens of different ethnic and religious groups. For hundreds of years, non-Muslims were allowed to keep their cultures, but they had fewer rights and had to pay extra taxes. The Tanzimat reforms, they wanted to erase all those lines and create one single, all-inclusive Ottoman identity with equal rights for every single person. But this radical idea, it backfired spectacularly. The traditional Muslim ruling classes, well, they resisted losing their privileged status. At the same time, all these minority groups who were getting swept up in this new wave of nationalism, often with a little encouragement from European powers, they didn't want to be Ottomans. They wanted their own nations. So instead of unity, you got chaos, separatist movements, and the empire started losing huge chunks of territory. And all of this chaos brings us right back to the man we started with, Sultan Abdul Hamid II. His time on the throne was this fascinating and, as it turns out, fatal contradiction. See, on one hand, he was all in on modernization. He expanded education, he oversaw massive building projects. But on the other hand, he was an absolute monarch in every sense of the word. He suspended the constitution, slapped censorship on everything, and used brutal oppression to crush anyone who disagreed with him, including horrific massacres against the Armenians. He was trying to have it both ways, a modern state with a medieval ruler. Yeah, that couldn't last. In 1908, a group of reform-minded army officers, who became known as the Young Turks, led a revolution. They forced Abdulhamid to bring back the constitution, and just like that, his absolute power was gone. And yeah, there was a new sultan on the throne, but let's be real, the true power now belonged to the Young Turks and their political party. So let's recap. The empire is fractured, it's politically unstable, and it's hemorrhaging territory left and right. And then came the knockout punch, World War I. The Young Turk government decided to side with Germany, and the war was an absolute, unmitigated disaster. To put it in perspective for you, the Ottoman Empire suffered the highest number of deaths per capita of any nation in the entire conflict. The human cost was just staggering, and it stretched the already fragile state to its absolute breaking point. In the midst of all this wartime chaos, the government enacted this law. It was called the Temporary Law of Deportation. And this became the chilling legal cover for the systematic ethnic cleansing of the empire's Armenian population. It was carried out with horrific brutality, and an estimated 1 million Armenians died in what is now widely recognized as the Armenian Genocide. By 1918, the war is over. The Ottoman Empire is on the losing side, and the winners, mainly Britain and France, they wasted absolutely no time in carving up the spoils. And this right here is basically how the modern Middle East was born. The Allies had made promises to some Arab leaders, which led to the creation of states like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Jordan. Then they basically just drew lines on a map, dividing up the rest into protectorates like Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. In the Turkish heartland of Anatolia, though, things were different. A fierce war of independence led to the creation of a grand new nation, the Republic of Turkey. And with that, in 1923, it was officially done. Over. More than 600 years of history, of culture, of power, gone. The House of Osman, one of the longest ruling dynasties in the history of the world, had finally come to an end. But here's the thing. The story doesn't really stop in 1923. The lines that were drawn in the sand a century ago, the ethnic tensions that were stoked, the political vacuums that were left behind, all of it continues to shape the world we live in, especially in the Middle East and the Balkans. It leaves us with one last, really crucial thought. The fall of an empire is never just a historical event. It's a shadow that stretches long into our present.